Hi there, this is Emad Aysha, a SF researcher and author from Cairo, Egypt, and this is hopefully the first among several videos discussing the undeserved accolades being heaped on the new Dune movies. And I say this with a heavy heart because I'm a fan of Dune Part 2. It's Dune Part 1 that's getting undeserved attention because of the success of the first movie, and I'm afraid the flaws that ruined that first movie, are going to carry on into the third movie, and they almost ruined the second one. Bear me out, listen to me, and you'll see what I mean. What's the problem with Dune Part 1? The director, as great as he is, producer-director, top-notch guy, does not really understand science fiction and does not really understand the novel Dune by Frank Herbert. Science fiction I'll explain later, but Dune, the novel, is a very unique novel in science fiction history because it's a mystery wrapped in a riddle in an enigma. Everything about the world of the Dune novel is a revelation. Secrets upon secret layers of mystery being peeled away throughout the whole story from start to finish. Spice is poison. If Dune and Jessica ever leave the planet, they'll go into withdrawal and they'll die. And all the spice addicts in the world will die, and the whole entire galaxy. It's a trap. Dune is a trap, literally, even physically to their bodies, their metabolism. Seleucus Secundus, the prison planet, the dreaded prison planet, is actually the secret recruiting ground of the Sardaukar. The worst dregs of the universe go there, go through a selection process, and the strong who survive become the dreaded terror troops of the Emperor, the soldier fanatics. People with blades and shivs everywhere on their body, people with garroting wire hidden in their hair, people who are so conditioned for violence and obedience, voice only just barely works on them. Even Paul has problem talking to them. The mentats, people who take the place of artificial intelligence, do not make a machine in the image of a man's mind, commandment against AI. And the whole world of Dune is this anti-AI. And wouldn't you know it, we're in the era where everybody's terrified of AI, and AI is becoming a reality. This is more relevant than ever before, and they completely forget to mention it in the movie. And the mentats are reduced to bean counters and glorified accountants talking about profit ratios and profit projections and profit and loss, and it's bloody disgraceful. Poor Thufir and poor Piter. Like I said, the Fremen, they're the closest guarded secret of the galaxy. Their origins, their mythology, their true numbers and force and organization, and what their plan is for the planet, and their ecological master plan and Liat kinds. And everybody thinks they're just a few vagabonds wandering the desert and the towns. But in actual fact, they exist in vast numbers, and they're our true allies. And the Imperial Census Bureau has failed to take statistics of them, and Duncan Idaho tells us that in the novel. Very important key scene in the novel. And to show you how the movie fails to capture the aura of the novel, the energy aura of the novel, the zeitgeist of the novel, make a contrast between two scenes in the David Lynch movie, which gets a lot of flack but is actually really good, and two scenes in the new movie, Dune Part 1, that gets praise it doesn't deserve. Just two scenes. In David Lynch, you have Paul training with the machine and shield practice and these kind of things, and he's talking to Dr. Yue. So we don't know much about the Fremen. There are only so many of them, and they're blue and blue eyes. And also, I've got a sample from a book film of a worm, and it's only so many kilometers. Only? You have no idea how big these things can get. There have been worm sightings of so many kilometers in the deep desert in the southern. So it creates straight away, it piques your interest, it whets your appetite. It creates this aura of mystery, and the thrill, setup and payoff. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And watching the movie again and again, and listening to the soundtrack, I figured out how they did it, how they pulled it off. The music in that scene is very low, and it sounds like a hubbub, like you're on board a ship, the engines of the ship. So there's this sense that you're hurtling through space, going to the unknown, the journey onto the unknown. You feel that they're on board a spaceship in a room. In reality, they're in a room in a castle on a planet, and yet you have this sense of motion. And it's because of the sound and also the set design. There's a metallic sheen to the walls and that kind of thing. Instead of, even though it's actually made of wood and stone, it feels like they're inside a spaceship. It's all fiberglass and metal and these kind of things. Genius. Dialogue, acting, set design, and music, sound effects. Second scene that's great in the David Lynch movie, that creates that air of mystery, again, is when they get to Arrakis and they meet Duncan Idaho and he tells them what he thinks about the Fremen. And I feel that a great secret has been hidden on this planet, which is, it's from the novel, literally. That's how the director piques your interest and pulls you into the mystery of the movie, and you want to wait to get to you're willing to go to the end to find out all these revelations. None of that is in the new movie. Two scenes, off-putting, down-putting, complete utter waste of time scenes to illustrate the feel of the new movie. You have a concerted attempt to simplify the plot, remove subplots, get rid of characters, simplify dialogue. That's all perfectly okay. I don't have a problem with that. But what do they do with the time they've saved? They waste it by putting new scenes in that weren't in the novel and that accomplish absolutely nothing. They don't tell us anything we don't already know, and they're terrible scenes in themselves. They're badly written and full of holes and they contradict each other. Two scenes contrasted to the two scenes in David Lynch. You have the Reverend Mother going to Gidi Prime to talk to the Baron and beg for the lives of Paul and Jessica. She sees this spider-human hybrid thing and tells it to leave so it doesn't listen in on them. And then she activates the sound shield. But if you've activated the sound shield, then that thing can't listen to you. So what's the point of telling it to leave? The other thing is what? The sound shield. She activates it. She tells the computer, activate sound shield. And I went and checked. I went on YouTube to make sure my memory wasn't playing tricks on me. But it's not her castle. The computer is programmed, I assume, for the voice of the Baron or Piter. So why would it be activated by her voice? It doesn't make any sense. When I know the Bene Gesserit have voice hypnosis, but I don't think it works on tape recorders and voice recognition software. And then you have this dialogue of the deaf, as if three people are in a room, or three separate rooms, and can't hear each other. She begs for their lives. He says, of course I would never make the Bene Gesserit angry. Go in peace. And then Piter objects and said, who said I didn't say I was not going to kill them, I'm just not going to let them live. Something like that. But she is a truth-sayer. She's a walking lie detector set. She's the top truth-sayer in the galaxy. She can tell if he's lying. And we can tell without being truth-sayers. And to add insult to injury, to really rub it in, you have Piter saying, but you gave your word to the Bene Gesserit. First of all, he was objecting to not killing Paul. Then all of a sudden he turns humanitarian and said, but you gave your word. I thought Piter was the head of the League of Assassins. I thought he was the guy who tortured people to death and enjoyed it. I thought he was the guy in charge of putting poison in other people's food to get rid of rivals. I thought he was the guy who did clandestine activity and diplomacy and the counterintelligence. All of a sudden he becomes a ninny who believes that honesty is the best policy. And who's he talking to? The Baron Harkonnen. He's actually surprised that Baron Harkonnen is lying. Can you imagine a speechwriter or a spin doctor being surprised the politician he works for is lying? He's a spin doctor. His job is to say, no, he wasn't actually lying. He just didn't mean what he said. You see what I mean? It's such a badly written scene. Second scene that is also atrocious. Poor Piter, great character in the novel, great character even in the prequel novels, which are terrible. He's the only colorful guy who stands out. He goes to Seleucus Secundus to finalize the deal or negotiate the deal or whatever with Sardaukar, and at first things are going well. You have this big hostile planet, large planet, horrible weather, desolate place, perfect place to breeding ground for soldier fanatics. I like that initially, and I like the look of Sardaukar and the blood ritual. Didn't like their uniforms much, gray, boring color. I think they'd be dressed in gold or something, or red. But then it's completely deflated when you see Piter, and he's wearing what I thought at first were earmuffs. Like it's too cold for him there. Or he's afraid his ears are going to get wet. And he's dressed in what looks like a cross between an S&M outfit and the headgear of a World War II fighter pilot. Anyway. And then you get this inane discussion, this dialogue of the death, again, a second time, between Piter and the Sardaukar. And he's telling him, oh, the Atreides, they're very well trained, Duncan and Gurney. We're the Emperor's blades. Nobody stands against us, they fall. Yeah, but he's going there to tempt them to come and work with them. But they've already agreed on the plan beforehand, and it's the Emperor's order. And everybody in the entire galaxy knows about it, except apparently Thufir and Duke Leto. The Bene Gesserit know about it. It's common knowledge among the Fremen, but somehow the intelligence chief, Thufir, doesn't know because he's busy doing accounting, profit ratios, and these kind of things, apparently. And Duke Leto is a walking, a likable buffoon. He's too busy being honorable to keep himself alive and keep his family alive. Anyway, leave that aside. And then Piter says, so it says we agreed. If you've already agreed on this beforehand, and we've been told that the Sardaukar are part of the plan ages ago, why do we need to see this? We're wasting our time. I understand, show don't tell, but they've already told you, and then they tell you again while they're showing it to you, and wasting time that you don't have. You're trying to simplify the plot. You're trying to simplify the world building, and the characters, and the dialogue, to speed things up, not bore people to death. But you're boring people to death. It's like they had a quota of time they had to use up, and a quota of special effects they had to use up, and if they didn't use it, they wouldn't get the money and time in the next movie, which is what I suspect. Now, this brings me to what caused the problems in the first movie, and to an extent in the second movie. I think it's a structural problem, a production problem. An elementary mistake happened in the first movie, and I noticed this. You have Jessica asking Duncan, are you sure that they were Sardaukar? The ones that you fought in the palaces. You crossed swords with them, you have no doubt. And that's essentially in the novel. But there's no need for him to figure out that these are Sardaukar, because they're dressed like Sardaukar. They're wearing their distinctive grey uniform and distinct helmet, headgear. And you have the poor Atreides soldiers who get massacred. They kill the Harkonnens, beat them easily. Then they see the Sardaukar and they scream out, Sardaukar, Sardaukar. And they get their asses whooped. So there's no secret. So why do you have this inane scene where Jessica is asking Duncan that? I checked the novel. The scene is there, but wouldn't you know, in the novel, the Sardaukar are disguised as Harkonnens. Even when they track down Light Kynes, Duncan, Jessica, and Paul, they're actually part of a detachment of troops of Harkonnens who are tracking their signals and that kind of thing. And they're disguised again as Harkonnens, and the Harkonnens are calling the shots in that scene. So that's why you have a scene. That's why you have Jessica asking Duncan, "Are you sure they're Sardaukar?" I'm sure. Fighting skills, no doubt about it. No way Harkonnens can fight that good. So what seems to have happened is this. Somebody wrote an initial draft of the script based on the novel, simplified, streamlined. Okay. Then somebody, when they actually did the production, they decided that, how do I put it? It seems the production team doing the storyboarding or filming the stories and storyboardings and didn't read that script. Oh no, wait. No, let me say that again. Sorry. Yeah, the guy who wrote the first script probably read the novel, summarized it, and then the guy who revised the script finally didn't read the novel. So he didn't realize that there was an inconsistency between the way the Sardaukar were dressed in those fight sequences compared to the way they are in the first draft of the script and in the original novel. So there's this disconnect, there's no communication happening. And the director, who's supposed to be the maestro, who's pulling all the elements together, isn't doing it, or isn't being allowed to do it by the studio, maybe. Studio system, the size of the production, or the speed of the production. But it's still inexcusable. And wouldn't you know it, if you look at the second movie, you find similar mistakes. You have Raban freaking out kill the rats, dirty rats, and smashing his officer's head into the computer because of escalating insurgency. And this story in Dune Part 2 begins 5 minutes after Dune Part 1. They still haven't even buried Jamis or taken the water out of him. They haven't had a chance. Where's this escalation? They just won a massive victory. They wiped out their historical foe, the Atreides, and burned them all to smithereens. Horrible scene. And the Fremen got their asses whooped in the first movie, in the very first opening scene, with artillery making mockery of their pea shooter laser weapons. So why is he freaking out? Why is he afraid that his uncle will find out about this escalating? There's no escalating insurgency. It's only been 5 minutes since their crushing victory. And you also have the very telling scene where Gurney, you see him as a smuggler playing the balalaika and reminiscing on the good old days when he was a warrior and could face his opponents face to face, and he's beaten down with time and he's slightly grayer and all these things. And that's a really good scene. That whole sequence is great, by the way. I really like Dune Part 2. But what he's saying doesn't make sense. It makes it sound like years have gone by for him to be beaten down by fate and by time. But in reality, the story's 7 or 8 months, because Jessica still hasn't given birth to Alia. And Alia is actually growing more quickly than the average baby. So it's probably not even 9 months. Like I said, 7, 8 months. 7, 8 months and he grew gray hair? And he's beaten down by time and learned to live like a scavenger and a smuggler and not face his enemies and be a brilliant commander anymore? It seems again that there was a script that fit the novel, and then they decided, no, we have to speed things up and take things out, and they forgot to rewrite those 2 scenes. The scene in the beginning with the rats kill them all, and the scene later on with Gurney Halleck. It's like you have people who refuse to sit in the same room and compare notes. Different script writers, the production people, cinematography people, and the director. Everybody's in a different location doing his own thing. And there's no channels of communication and no one person in charge putting it all together, the director. And that worries me, what's going to happen with Dune Messiah. And the novel, that's my favorite novel of the Frank Herbert novels. It's very complicated, harrowing, subjective, with evil geniuses all over the place, and incredible philosophical concepts. Duncan Idaho is bringing back to life, and can he remember his former life? And he has these metallic eyes, and you have drug addiction on Arrakis as people become corpulent and decadent, and you have the Benetil Yaksu, these clone people, the face dancers, and all. Incredible stuff, incredible world building, even compared to the first novel, and it's very emotional and harrowing. It's not like a documentary. The first novel has a documentary feel to it. This is much more subjective. It's really told from Paul's perspective. How on earth are they going to put that on screen if they can't get the script writers and the production people to sit in the same room and talk to each other? Yeah, God save us all. Now, getting to one final criticism of Denis Villeneuve, who is a great director and producer, great visualist, but he doesn't seem to understand science fiction. He's lousy at world building. We saw that in Blade Runner 2049 and also here, and he doesn't even need to world build here. He's got it all in the novel. He just has to simplify. He doesn't even do that. He's not interested in world building, apparently. He doesn't understand really science fiction. Science fiction, again, mystery wrapped in a riddle and enigma. It's journey of discovery and self-discovery as well. Perfect example of that, amazingly enough, is the new Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movie. I haven't seen the other ones, just the very first one. And I was quite impressed. I was really, that buzz, that sci-fi buzz. It's an anthropological journey of discovery and a scientific journey of discovery. Hero's journey with Noah, rites of passage kind of journey, like Native Americans, getting the eggs and taking care of the egg and keeping it close to your heart, not damaging it, and his sense of commitment to his family and his ego and wanting to be a show-off and these kind of things, and forced into a terrible situation where he loses everything that he thought he didn't need or was a bit nonchalant about it, and also the mystery of what happened to the world that Caesar built and how it went into decline, and what's actually happened to the human race. Can they think? Can they talk? And who are these these new mysterious enemies. The apes are hunting fellow apes, and why are they so concerned with exterminating what's left of the humans when they're not really a threat? And Mia, and can she speak, and what's her secret mission? And it's very well balanced and well paced. And it's this delicious gourmet meal of science fiction. Journey of anthropological discovery, world building level of people and customs and their passions and relationships, and the way they acclimatize themselves to the world and respect the world around them, or don't try to rule it. And mystery concerning the plot and the science and what's happened to the world and what they're trying to do. The Caesar person, why he calls himself Caesar and Proximo, and all these things, and where he's getting these tools from. And the human beings, can they ever reassert their control, or they've all become dumb, or are there others in hiding? All these wonderful, and it's very balanced and it works. The guy, even though the movie does have problems, not great, it's still not as good as the first new Apes franchise, and it's not good as the original, of course. But it is a really good movie, and it's a proper science fiction movie at that level. Denis Villeneuve does not understand that. You can see that in Blade Runner 2049 and in Dune Part 1. You have shield technology, so people have to use swords, but you still have lasers, and nobody mentions that when a laser hits a shield, it creates a massive explosion that kills both the person shooting and the person shot. Even though you see a tiny little smidgen of that in the second movie, when they zap the ornithopter, when they're attacking the spice harvester. Makes you wonder why they're using rocket launchers and grenades and these kind of things, and swords. The Mentats, who almost have no role to play and don't pop up, not even mentioned in the second movie, even though Paul himself was trained by Thufir to be a Mentat, the secret way, not knowing that he was being trained, and that's what the Kwisatz Haderach is. He's a superhuman super Mentat, supercomputer, who can see the future, chart a course for mankind where they have technological progress without AI rebelling against them, and giving the human civilization another 1,000 years, another chance. Doesn't show up, and all sorts of other world-building problems. And later on, 2049 is much, much worse at that level. I didn't hate that movie, actually. I was just disappointed with it. But Dune Part 1 really made me angry. I was furious. They had no reason to mess up the world building because it's in the novel. All they had to do is slim things down. They ended up adding stuff that was a waste of time. And the pacing was all over the place. But Blade Runner 2049 is fundamentally flawed from the premise and from the world building and everything. You have this future world where the ecosystems are dying and you have snow almost every day, and yet you have solar power. How can you have solar power if you have clouds and snow? You see a solar farm in the beginning. And if you have solar farms give you clean, renewable energy, why is the ecosystem dying? You have global cooling instead of global warming, and yet you have sea levels going up and huge walls to protect you from the sea. Sea levels go up when you have global warming and ice caps melt. Here it's the other way around. You have cloud cover and snow and smog and fog and all these things, and then you get this wonderful sight of beautiful, warm, streaming light coming through the windows of the hero in his apartment. I thought there was snow all the time, and clouds all the time, and toxic fumes, and they're inside the city center, not out in the wilderness. You have Nexus 8s who can live as long as a human being and are rebellious like human beings. Why on earth would somebody create a thing that doesn't have a failsafe in it, like the Nexus 6? Weird. You have the Wallace guy, one of the least impressive bad guys in history. Him and the guy in Ghostbusters 2016, essentially. And he wants to make replicants that can breed, so you can colonize the planets more quickly. But all the replicants are in this movie, in this world, is clones of human beings, slightly modified to make them stronger and more obedient. But I'm pretty sure that Dolly the sheep clone could get pregnant. She has the same genes as a regular sheep that could get pregnant. doesn't make any sense. Yeah, what else is there? You have the hero who thinks that he's human and the long lost son of Harrison Ford and Sean Young. Okay, but I'm sure he can tell that he's a replicant, a more advanced version than Nexus 8, because he's stronger than them. He killed and beat up a guy who's twice his size and doesn't seem to have pain problems. Pain receptors are dulled. Surely that indicate to him that he's a new model replicant like all the new model obedient replicants? Can he really be that daft? And doesn't he have eye retinal scan register to check that he's a replicant? I think he was made after the big blackout, so there should be a record of him somewhere. And it just there's just endless problems with it. And it's hyperbolic and self-centered around Ryan Gosling, who's a good actor and is a good choice for the role. He has this Nazi exterminator look to him, but it's just all the women revolve around him, the whole universe. So it just feels egotistical. And it's just a very poorly managed world building and presenting the world. And that tells you that Denis Villeneuve is not a worlder. He's not a proper science fiction director. Compare that to somebody like Paul Verhoeven. Never did any science fiction in his life, and his first SF movie is one of his best movies ever, RoboCop, and it's one of the best SF movies ever made. And it's brilliant at the level of informing you about the world. News broadcast, commercial, would you like this heart? We care. So and so cops were killed by the crime lord of old Detroit. The floating peace platform got off to a rocky start. Neutron bomb and media bonanza being bashed with information. And it's delicious and delightful, and every scene is airtight. Every scene progresses logically to the next scene. Pacing is beautiful, and it's an action movie as well. So you can do entertainment, pop culture, and high art at the same time. High concept science fiction at the same time. Why does that not happen in Dune Part 1? The problem with David Lynch's Dune is it was too true to the novel, and so it lacked levity and excitement. It's not humorous. Everybody's really serious and taut. And again, it's too complicated. Okay, fine. But now you've got the time you need, and you have this kind of YA cast. Chani and Paul look like they're out of a YA novel. The dialogue is like out of a YA novel. And I'm not the person who actually has noticed this. Other people have. And it just doesn't work. He wastes time, as if on purpose, to fulfill a quota. He's become a bean counter like what he did to the Mentats, believe it or not. Talk about poetic justice. So anyway, that's enough of my ranting. Dune Part 2 is a great movie, and Denis Villeneuve is a great director. I just don't think he's the right person for the job. He does not understand Dune, and he's not a proper science fiction director. That's enough. This is Emad, what's the expression, over and out, and we'll talk in the future, God willing. Goodbye.